Welcome to Dream Pushers. We connect you with Web3's vanguard, creators and entrepreneurs shaping the future. Hosted by Chris Jonu and presented by Draper University.
I want to quickly mention that none of this is investment advice or financial advice, trading advice, or any sort of advice. And we do not recommend any cryptocurrency or investing in any projects. We're just showcasing the stories of founders. Welcome back, Dream Pushers Podcast. This is Chris Jonu. And today we have Gerald Heydenreich, serial entrepreneur and co-founder of EtherMail, the world's first Web3 email provider that's kicking ass. And I'm lucky enough to just kind of catch him when he was going viral and bring it to the attention of the Draper Associates team. So super proud to play a small part in his success. But he is truly a incredible entrepreneur. He had also founded Portum AG, a pioneering European provider of B2B reverse online auctions, Buy VIP, an e-commerce shopping community acquired by Amazon, and also founded Pippa and Gene, a social selling community. He's been actively involved in blockchain and Web3 investments and also runs the Barcelona Blockchain Club. So busy guy and a pioneer in the space. I'm sure you'll love the interview. I did. Cheers. Welcome, Gerald. How you doing, my friend?
Very good, Chris. Everything cool, man. Everything good up here, and I hope everything is good also down there.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's good. Bit rainy today, but generally been pretty good. Summer over here, so it's nice. You have such an interesting background, and I want to go through it. And if I had to summarize it, I couldn't. Right? It's kind of like mine. So I don't know who I can attribute it to, but it's something like I'm completely unemployable. It's something like that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the only thing you can do basically is start your own business.
Yeah, exactly. You've got, businesses that were acquired by Amazon in this industry, and then, a business solving problems for models and model management over here. Then you got, investing and crypto stuff. So I want to go back a little bit, kind of set the scene for the audience and let them understand a little bit about how you got here to present day. And I usually start with the question, was there a mother or father that was an entrepreneur?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, my father was an entrepreneur and he had his own business, basically. Something very actually old school. He's actually an antique dealer. So I spent my youth in hunting antiques and restoring them and so on. But I learned how to basically buy and sell stuff. And I think that's for sure a gene I got from my father. And then my grandfather also, he was an entrepreneur. So it definitely runs in the family.
Yeah, because I kind of keep tabs on it, right? Because it's kind of that, is the entrepreneur born or made, that that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's always interesting to hear. And then, so were you at when you were at school, were you kind of restless because this is you wanted to start something of your own? When did you start to feel like you wanted to do your own thing?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a typical thing in school. I mean, I was very restless actually. Like my son now is also very restless. So I used to then actually work on the sides and always have something going, and then bought something and sold something, and then actually I really sneaked out. I was always interested in business. So when I was 14, 15, I was reading in the library business magazines basically. And that's also how I also got into my university, then studying business. And for me, it was clear I wanted to start my own business. I didn't know yet what at the time, of course, but I just was clear I wanted to do it. But then, of course, you always have these expectations around. I mean, and luckily, my parents also were very open, but still, being an entrepreneur is always a challenge because you're doing something what 90% of the other world doesn't really do. And I mean, in Germany specifically, it's only like 10% of the people are entrepreneurs. Then you're the odd kid, of course, always. And you have to fight against the masses telling you, no, but you have to be employed and you have to be in the system, working your ass off for the next 50 years to pay social security. So the whole system works. But it was always interesting. I loved it to go against the stream.
And then, so what was the first venture? And feel free to talk about the failures as well, because there's so much learning in that as well. But I'd love to just hear kind of where you started and through to present day.
Cool, yeah. So I essentially, after I graduated, I went for 1 year into a large corporation called Höchst, at the time the largest chemical company in the world. And I tried it for a year, and they actually threw me out after 1 year because they said impossible to work with you. So I stood there and said, okay, fine, that doesn't work. So I do something on my own. And luckily, I actually had gotten in contact at the end of the 90s. It was with some people in one of the projects actually from IBM. And I really got into the tech space. And these guys were super smart engineers, basically. And we figured out, hey, at the time, it was literally install software. And we kind of stumbled across a model in the US where they tried to do a reverse auction, enabling basically companies to lower purchasing prices. Now, it's something completely unusual, you could say, but I loved the challenge and thought, okay, well, why don't we just try it and actually build a software which runs on the internet, where people can log into from wherever in the world with a browser and just do reverse auctions and lower prices. And it sounds now very normal, but at the end of the 90s, people didn't really have access to internet that much. Software on the internet wasn't really something what was going. Real-time bidding was just getting started with eBay and so on. So we did that, and then literally we jumped into it, spent all our money on buying some computers. It sat in the office of one of the guys, actually in the apartment of one of the guys. We just got started. One of the first things I actually remember as a failure, or as a big hit in the face, was we were really getting started well. We basically had some people already investing the first little of money and so on. Then we were actually about to close a large financing round, and everything was done, all the contracts done and so on. We were literally on the way to the notary, and the investor, calls me up and says, "Hey, Gary, I have some bad news. We changed our mind."
Oh,
what
great.
do you mean?
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Great, thanks. That's a great news. And we had already spent, like, I don't know, at the time, 100,000 euros or something, which was a huge amount of money upfront for some commitments we had done. So literally, there we are, 2 months down the line with big commitments, and already more or less in front of no money, and the guy basically leaving. And you know how this is. You plan, and you have like 3 weeks or 2 weeks more money, and money has to arrive, otherwise you're screwed, basically. So that was one of the first learnings. A deal isn't signed until the money is in the bank. And it was a good thing. I mean, we managed to turn around. We called up people and said, listen, we have to do this. And also, makes you humble, let's say, understanding that it's not a given, and that you basically have to really fight to also convince people. And as I said, it's done when the money's in the bank and not before.
Absolutely. And then so was this some sort of lab within IBM? How did you manage to get, like, this is or is this trade shift?
No, actually, there was the first company which we started. It's called Portum, basically, and in IBM there was it was a section which was really very much focused on knowledge management and internet applications in Frankfurt at the time. And these guys were basically working for some companies, for Deutsche Post, for example, the mail company, and the postal company of Germany. And that's how I got to know these people, because we were doing a project with them, with that chemical company, knowledge management. And then when I left, or when I got left from Höchst, they called me up and said, listen, Gary, why don't we do something? And that's how I got into it, because for them it was, I kind of represented the business side, and how to make, and how to sell, and how to bring things to market. And they were great engineers. And of course, that combination was a really, really cool thing eventually.
And then so it seems like you had a bit of a common theme with the with marketplaces, right? Which are not an easy business to pull off. I mean, so so I'd love to hear just like some quick thoughts on two-sided marketplaces and how you managed to get things going.
Yeah, so I mean, I believe the internet is, of course, the place where you can really benefit from making connections between people, and marketplaces is something what in the offline world is super difficult, because you have to have a fair or something like this. So I believe marketplaces, demand and supply, bringing it somehow together in the internet is a perfect example. And now with EtherMail, for example, it's a communication marketplace, you could basically say. So good question. I never asked myself why I kind of tend to go back to marketplaces, but perhaps just naturally, I think it's one of those great things where you can really add a lot of value. So the question comes as clear as you said, is, well, it's super difficult to pull off, because you have to bring this side and this side somehow together. And that's, I think, what perhaps I like. I kind of like the challenge to convince both sides to make something good out of it and bring them together and align interests. And we did that at the time with Portum, which basically is a purchasing marketplace for large corporations. Whereas, to be fair, in this part, there was one side clearly having the power, which was the purchasing side, and they simply said, okay, guys, if you want to be in the future selling to us, this is the way of how you're going to communicate with us. So they could basically enforce the power, where of course in today's world, for example, with EtherMail, it's a liberal thing. It's not, you can't force one side. So you have to think, okay, how can I have convincing arguments for both parties to join? Now, having said this, I think the beauty is, if a marketplace works, it has this huge network effect. And I like to multiply my time, and I like to do things which then can run on its own. It's because if you essentially, I mean, it's literally when you work, right? I mean, you have 12 hours per day, or 8 or 10 hours, however you work, and you exchange time for money essentially, but you don't multiply. So the only way of really how you can, in my opinion, generate wealth long-term is by multiplying time somehow. And of course, I mean, in the financial industry, people do it by compound interest and so on. But in our logic is my question always is, how can I multiply my time? And multiplying time essentially means enabling other people to do something from what I can eventually benefit from. And the better you do this, and the more successful you make other people to generate something for them, the more you basically will benefit. It's of course in the specific thing or the most clear way of where we did this was in the social selling network marketing industry. And I know it has a certain taste to it, but if you're honest about it, there's some very good parts about it. The problem also is very often people actually take advantage of these network effects, and then it becomes bad, let's say. But in a straightforward way, there's nothing wrong with network effects, because it really helps to multiply your time and benefit from other people doing certain things. And I think we have seen this in the software industry also. You produce a software once, and then you have millions of people using it. Whereas, of course, if you just do it once and it's a custom-made product, it's just one person using it. And that's, I believe, how long-term you can actually generate wealth, and also can have some kind of an influence of other people on actually changing their lives and basically enabling them.
If I had to put a through line, maybe the marketplace is perhaps one of them. But like, if I again then think about, social selling communities and model management tool or private sales club, some of this stuff, are these opportunities that you saw that you needed to solve, which is generally not ones that like founders can kind of commit to for any long period, right? Versus like something the burning desire around a problem? Or was this just, you saw it, you went through it for it, and it was just, once I get here, I'm out? Or like, what was it, the thought process as you went through some of these things?
Yeah. No, I mean, I can now bullshit you, and I think I had this long analysis and all these things, and that's why I eventually came up with it. The honest truth is, I look at what life brings me, and I basically follow a little bit my gut feeling of what I believe makes sense and doesn't make sense. So, and for me, at least, it has served me quite well. It kind of, I look myself as a finder, right? Okay, there is something. Okay, I see something, and I mean, there's hundreds of things coming at you always, and you have to kind of filter, okay, what is good and what is the bullshit. And then you look at, okay, where are the nuggets? And those nuggets, then you see, oh, there is something, yeah. I don't know exactly what it is, but there is something. And then you start digging into, and then you realize, okay, wow, again, there's a multiplication effect. And if that can be big, it can be really big. So the common theme, let's say, is for me is, how big can that be? Because eventually, again, same thing, we have 365 days per year and 24 hours per day. Every idea you put your time in, time is the most valuable asset we all have, because it only goes, it doesn't come again. Compared to money, for example, it comes, it goes. Means that if you focus your time on something, you might as well focus your time on something which can be really, really be big. And it can be big and it can fail, that's fine. But if it only has the opportunity or the option to be mediocre, then you're spending probably your time on something which is not well spent, because again, you only have a limited amount of time. And I'm fine with failure. I think that's part of the game. If you're not fine to fail, you never shot high, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, you're in the wrong business. That's for sure. So, I don't want to harp on the past so much. It's just to kind of understand, and I love these lessons, right? I'm writing down as I go, and I think people get a lot out of it. How does Amazon get into the picture? I'd love to just hear some of these kind of acquisitions that occurred, because it's super cool, and then I want to kind of frame the way into the investment bit, and then we'll get into EtherMail, because I'm guessing there was a burning desire to kind of get back on the other side of the table at some point as well. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So you're referring to why Amazon bought by VIP at the time, I assume, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So at the time we started by VIP. It's a fashion club basically, where we sold branded products and time limited campaigns at discounted prices, like an outlet with time limitations, basically giving access to great products at discounted prices. And we started in 2006, and in 2006, fashion wasn't really on the internet yet. I mean, not as today. Amazon was primarily selling books and other things, of course, and many other things. But fashion wasn't something which was on the top of the list. And it still had a lot of room to grow. And specifically, Amazon wasn't really strong there. I'm not sure if the Zappos acquisition already had happened or not. But anyways, they, of course, realized that fashion and this part is something which is really important for the future. So in 2010, we had about 10 million members in our community in Europe, about 320 employees. We essentially looked at how can we grow also long-term. And we were a little bit also, let's say, cautious and aware that, of course, some of the big players like Amazon and others were about to enter the fashion space. And we thought, okay, it's going to be difficult to compete with these guys long-term potentially. So well, either we do a very large financing round, or we do an IPO, or we have some strategic discussions basically. And we did at the time a dual track, essentially speaking to many investors. That we had an offer to basically get another investment of $50 million. But then at the same time also, actually, Amazon was very interested. And I think because of two reasons. Number one, because they really wanted to get access and know-how to the fashion side of this industry. And number two, probably equally important, the company at the time was headquartered in Spain. They really saw this also as a great opportunity to enter with Amazon into Southern Europe and basically take some of the, let's say, starting pain out of the company, because then you already had something where you can build up. Now, they started they actually acquired it. I left after 3 months or 4 months, because for me, it wasn't there anymore. I felt, okay, it's a big company. I just didn't feel that it's the right thing for me to do. And I traveled for a year with my wife and my 2 children at the time.
Nice.
And they basically, I nearly died in an earthquake in Christchurch in 2011.
Yeah.
So that was a hard one.
The fun part of the trip. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, it was for sure a wake-up call of what you do with your life. Anyways, they started to do this, but to be fair, I think it was a difficult setup eventually, because fashion, and specifically high-class fashion or higher-class branded fashion with high prices, is a very different animal than CDs or books. Brands have a very certain way of how they want to deal, how they want to be dealt with, okay? So if you speak to a Polo Ralph Lauren or Gucci and other people, basically, they have they are all about brand, right? And brand means, hey, I'm here and you are here. So if you want to deal with these kind of brands, you have to have a certain attitude. And it's not like, well, I buy you a stock and then goodbye, because they're very cautious about what brand value is. And I think there was definitely a big clash at the time also on culturally of how this could work or it didn't work. But I mean, eventually, hey, they moved forward with this, became fully integrated in Amazon. It's no longer a standalone unit, which I think is fine. And they did something with it, but it's in that big thing of Amazon now, but it's kind of dissolved, which is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
Well, I mean, the point was, I guess for me was, there was an acquisition from Amazon. It's like one of the founder dreams, right? Like, and then, and then so I guess that puts a bit of money in your pocket. There's definitely now like some investing that's occurring. What do you love about the investment side, being on the other side of the table?
Yeah. So, I mean, I did this then for a while, but I have to admit, I believe I'm a better entrepreneur than investor, because one thing I learned is I get easily excited. as an entrepreneur, you have to get excited. Otherwise, you don't get started. Basically, you have to be a little bit naive, let's say, and being able to excite it. And then if you do this with your own time, your own money, you can always control where you spend, and you can easily say, okay, this doesn't work anymore, this one anymore doesn't anymore. But if you're an investor, you essentially put 50, 100, 200,000 euros into the business, but then you don't really have any more control, and which is good also, because you want to have entrepreneurs and founders who actually do their thing, because otherwise you can't be there all the time. And I learned that eventually a lot of the mistakes I already had done were just made again and again and again and again with my money, basically. And then if you don't have really deep pockets, meaning you have a big fund of 100, 200, 300 million, it very easily, it's a luck thing also. Yeah. And I've spoken to many of entrepreneurial friends also. Business angel investing sounds super easy, but the truth is it's super difficult to really make a return out of it, because you have to literally do 20, 30, 40, 50 investments to get this one or two things where basically it really makes a difference. It's a different story if you have a big fund, because at that level, for example, when you invest 3 or 5 million euros, the companies already have to be at a certain level already, so it reduces the risk. But the business angel invests on the idea level, or the PowerPoint or whatever, or the first prototype, and of course risk is much higher. So the percentage of the successful investments is much smaller. So for me, I decided I'm still doing some things, but very limited. I rather spend my time and my money on my own things where I'm really convinced that. And I also, to be honest, I like it. Yeah? I love having an idea. Now we are 35 people 6 months later, and it gives an energy, it gives a vibe, and we do something really good.
It's amazing. A question I ask my guests is around, that moment where they have that entrepreneurial bug. They sell the baseball cards, they wash cars, they do whatever.
Yeah.
When I'm doing the blockchain program, the second question I usually ask is, when was that? Can you pinpoint that moment when you're like, aha, with blockchain? When was that? When was that moment for you where you're like, this is the future? I'm convinced. I'm all in.
Yeah. So I tell you first of when I wasn't convinced, and stupidly I didn't go in. It was in 2015 actually. So I was on a conference. There was a guy actually who had been in blockchain for a while, and he came in. There was a golden suit and actually 2 pistols shooting out dollar notes, fake dollar notes. But that was it's like, Bitcoin is this thing, and so on. And this was my opening thing. I said, whoa, okay. Perhaps I'm just too old for this, and I was just in a different mindset. I was about enabling women to start their own business and sustainability and so on. Anyways, I thought, okay, I don't get this. I just don't get it. So I discarded it. I didn't even follow it, I think. And then it came back because actually 2018-19, then when we had sold the previous business to another company, my co-founder Shan, the now CEO also of EtherMail, he's super technical basically. He actually said, listen, let's look at this again. And I actually became an advisor in a project focused on blockchain and Web3 and NFTs, basically. And that opened my eyes again. And then actually there was an NFT sale, essentially, where in like 60 seconds, they got $1 million. And I thought, whoa, what did I miss here? Yeah. How do you get from a little card on the internet $1 million in 60 seconds, basically? So I realized there's something really big happening. And I realized that there is a lot of hype. There's crazy people in this space, but there's a lot of really smart people also in this space, and they're really doing great shit, pardon my language. So when you start then digging into it, and then coming from Web 1, Web 2, basically, I realized, whoa, this is the next big tectonic shift. It is the next thing. It's like the smartphone. It's like the internet in 99, basically, or 96 or 97, basically. It is this gigantic technological shift of decentralizing data and being able to access everybody data, and also, and that's something I also didn't get at the beginning, creating a second monetary system for this industry, basically. And when you start thinking about it more and more, you realize, well, we are really creating the next generation, even the next kind of how the world operates. It's super unclear, of course, how it actually is, but I just love the spirit in this space, and that everything is possible. People are super excited, and yeah, people just try out. And I mean, 90% fails. That's normal. but the sky is the limit, and everybody has the opportunity to do something really, really great and really change business models, which today are, in my opinion, just outdated also somehow. And if you think about data, I mean, the Googles, the Apples, the Amazons of the world, they own the world. Let's be honest about it. And they own whatever I am, more or less. And I don't think it's right. Don't get me wrong. I also have stocks of these guys and so on. But there's something wrong in the system. And I believe that motivation also of this generation and of this space is something which definitely will change of how companies operate in the future and how ownership also is. And I think that's what excites a lot of people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Same thing for me. Is the novelty of the business models is like, it's just, some of them just cannot exist in Web2. Yeah. And you're just like, hey, like that's crazy, but I love it. And yeah, I mean, the kind of where creativity meets tech, the NFT stuff was where it was like, for me, the finance, kind of stuff was interesting, but for me, the like digital scarcity, all that kind of thing, it just really, yeah, super, super cool. So EtherMail, right? Let's get into that. How does this problem occur? Is it just like, is that from you playing with, different tools and trying to figure out how to message people? How did it come about where you're just like, hey, this is what's missing? Yeah, I'd love to hear that bit.
Yeah, so on this end, Shant and me, we basically involved in some NFT launches and token projects. And what we saw was always that people then created a community on Discord or on Telegram, and then there was loads of noise. Yeah, hype, noise, people leaving. And then at one point, when moon, and then basically the whole thing basically at one stage, people just leave. And it happened to me. I was literally a member in dozens of Discords and Telegram, and I got pinged and I didn't see anything anymore. It was just noise. Yeah. So I couldn't differentiate anymore from what's relevant for me, what's not relevant on me, and what the natural mindset, of course, of a human being is. Well, you just mute, you just leave, because anyways, you can't follow it anymore. So that noise basically level sparked a discussion, and I was like, wow, how can we solve this basically? And then actually Shan came up one day and said, listen, Gary, what if we combine email with actually Web3 technologies, and what can we do out of it? And I said, I don't really know how this is going to look like, but I mean, you give it a shot. I mean, spend time on it and investigate and see what's happening. I'm a strong believer in email, by the way. At the time, I told you, we were basically sending every day 10 million emails, and the reaction time was always great because email is a trigger. We started to look at email again, and then because I thought, okay, well, email, is it growing or shrinking? Because people obviously use Instagram and Facebook Messenger and all the other things. Well, surprising, it's growing. We are at 4.3 billion people using emails. We're going to be at 4.6 billion in 2 years' time. It's 320 billion emails sent every year. And every year, it's basically increasing because it is actually the most efficient way of how to generate an interaction with users. And I think there's a couple of reasons behind it. You see, an email is something where you have to think first if you want to send it or not, because essentially it's not really free, because you also, it's really not that easy, because on the Telegram thing, I just put it in there and it's gone basically. But email, you have rich text, you have HTML, you might have a video and so on. So people have to think before they just send an email, because nobody would send every day an email, right? It was just noise. It's like a letter. Nobody would send a letter every day, basically. So email is a filter for relevant information. And I think that's why it's there and will always be there, number one. Number two, email is actually the first communication layer, which has been decentralized from the beginning. Nobody owns email. WhatsApp and Telegram and Facebook messengers is owned by certain companies. Email is not owned by anybody. Anybody with an application basically can access to the network and basically access the protocols, the IMAP and so on. And it's an infrastructure. So again, it's a little bit like a marketplace, you could say. So it is actually the perfect application for a decentralized world, aka blockchain and Web3, because it's not owned by definition, but it has the huge advantage that actually nearly everybody has an email and everybody knows about email. So we started thinking about it. Shane came up with a prototype, and then we realized, well, we are onto something really, really big, because eventually we believe email can be that bridge between Web 2 and Web 3. Because if 4.3 billion people have an email address, if we are able to then actually connect that email address with the Web3 logic of a wallet and create a new email, let's say, then there is a really big opportunity to onboard those users into the Web3 world. Because The big pie is not in the Web3 world. That's a super small pie still. The big pie is bringing people from Web2 into Web3. And that's basically how we get to it.
Amazing. And then, I was talking to one of your colleagues. Well, first, just the growth of it, right? Because, I happened to reach out to you around time, and I was just interested to learn about your fund at that point. And you're like, hey, sorry, like we're kind of busy at the moment or something like that. We're adding like 100,000 users a week or something like that. And I was like, whoa, what's going on? So can you just tell me a little bit about that and like kind of the excitement when you just saw like, I guess, people flooding in, and when you knew you were like, wow, we're really onto something?
Yeah, so essentially that was in August last year. We had doubled around with it a little bit. We did a first small financing round with Fabric and Greenfield, and then basically we started with a press release, some announcement and so on in August. And then all of a sudden we saw, wait, there's something happening. literally 50,000, 60,000 people signing up per week, basically. We're like, whoa, something is happening here. So we were fighting, in keeping up the systems, in protecting them, in making all those things relevant in order to ensure that the system wouldn't go down, because there was just so much traffic. And it is something, I think, in Web3, of course, people realize there is something super interesting. They wanted to be super early in also. And of course, we give the EMC, which is the EtherMail coin, as a reward also. Very similar to a little bit like the Brave Attention model and the Brave Attention token. And I believe, of course, people were very much incentivized to do this, because in the beginning, the C2C application wasn't 100% clear for us. So it is an end-to-end encrypted email for sure, but we really always looked at a way of communication channel for companies communicating with their token holders, basically. But at the time, we didn't have that part. So people just signed up, started using it, playing around with it, and so on. And we were super surprised and, of course, super happy. And that brought in a lot of challenges. Okay, getting the teams, getting the service, getting more money, and so on. And that's also, of course, when we met and where you kind of made that super good introduction. So I think that actually was also something very, very unique and a great story.
Yeah, the post is pretty cool. And then, you talked about the basic attention token. What now? You've kind of figured out the Web3 bit, right? But this is kind of just a start, because I remember talking to one of your colleagues around, hey, like once we have people using the product, there's all these things we can do where you can basically get people to, pay to get that email in front of them. All these different things that, again, couldn't happen in Web2. And I'd love to hear if you're happy to share some of those things that are like, you're proud of with like the innovation that's occurring, because people would automatically I think a lot of the people's heads go to, Web3 email. You log in with your wallet, I log in with my wallet, then I'm doing the same thing as always, but it's not the case, right? So I'd love to hear, some of the innovation that you're bringing to life at the same time.
Sure. So there's I think two main things which really make a big difference here. So the first one is Web3 email. In this case means wallet address at ethermail.io. So it connects with your wallet, and that means that whatever you do with your wallet has all of a sudden a communication layer or connection to a communication layer called email, basically. So it really allows email communication via wallet, or wallet-to-wallet communication via email, essentially. So that's kind of the baseline to it. Now, if you think a little bit further of what that means is, well, your wallet, of course, today is basically your store of NFTs and tokens and so on. So in the future, by the way, it will, in our opinion, the wallet will really be the central storage of receipts, let's call it, or digital ownership rights. And it could be a car receipt, it could be a handbag receipt, it could whatever be. And it will mean that, okay, I own this, and my wallet is my store where I say, this is my piece of product, for example. And that actually brings out a lot of interesting pieces. Let's start with the NFT part, because I think it's very clear and very easy to understand. So the NFT company essentially is issuing all those NFTs, or it could be a token company, right? So people buy this with their wallet essentially. And then you, Chris, for example, you buy the token, and then you're in the Telegram channel, the Discord channel, or again, one day you mute, you have your token, and then, by the way, you sell it to your colleague because you're fed up with the project or you do something else. Well, guess what? The new person is no longer in any kind of contact with the original issuer of the NFT or the token. Unless, of course, they go back to the site, they sign up with the newsletter, blah, 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 super complicated. So what we do is we basically give the token or NFT project a communication layer, like a MailChimp solution, essentially, which synchronizes with data on the blockchain. As we know which wallet has which token, we basically say, we give you a registry, an always updated registry of all your email, of all your token holders, and you can connect them or contact them via email. So you would have a segment of existing token holders, former token holders. You can sub-segment then and say, okay, show me which wallet addresses basically have other tokens, for example, also which own ETH, which are the most valuable ones, which were recently bought, and so on. So it really gives you an opportunity to interact in a very easy way, segmented way with your community. And it's always up to date, because if you now set a token, as I said, well, it just updates information in a different segment. And that is real innovation, because being in email or having sent 10 million emails per day, the problem is you don't reach the people anymore. Also, you don't really know if they're still active or if they still updated their information or not. You don't know if they bought something else and then you want to buy, you want to offer something on top of that, for example. So it really gives an insight, let's say, into consumer behavior through the wallet interaction. And now becomes the second part of the innovation, if the user wants, because of course the user can say, listen, I want to stay anonymous, I don't want to share any data, I basically am what I am, and I want to be secretive, and I just want to hide behind my wallet, and that's it basically. Now, but if the user, and that's something we believe is a core privacy feature, what the user has to have, a choice, says, I would like to actually be informed about other things. I'm open also to other project launches. I'm open for token launches, and so on and so on. And it could be in the future just normal advertisement. They can set in the back and say, I'm open to this kind of categories, and they define basically a value. That's something what we are in the process of finalizing also, what they would like to receive in order to be contacted, because eventually it's my time. If I read an email, it's my time which is spent, and my time might be very valuable. It will, of course, be automated in the future, because there's certain elements which you have to automate in order to make it working. There's like going to be real-time bidding also for certain audiences and so on. But basically what it allows is then companies to target those users and reward them with actually the EMC, so that they actually give attention to a certain project, for example. So we call this it's like a communication marketplace with an own communication currency, let's say, allowing the members of this communication marketplace or network to be rewarded, and also basically, of course, to spend money or spend the token within this infrastructure. And email is the underlying technology, basically. So these are the two big things which are new, because today, if I receive an email from somebody I didn't even ask for, I'm just getting mad because they just put me on some kind of a newsletter thing, and I don't even know why.
Yeah, these are not small things, mate. That's for sure. Amazing. It's kind of the solution to a problem that people continue to talk about, is like, I want to get paid for sharing my information. Done.
Exactly. 100%. That's exactly the thing. We reward you for sharing your information, and you decide how much you want to share. If you don't want to share something, that's fine.
Yeah, and it's going to be super interesting to see how that evolves too, right? Because to your point earlier, I think a lot of that behavior that was happening on sign up, has some element of the fact that, crypto folks by nature are kind of early adopters and stuff, right? So I think they do want to see the latest products and kind of hear about the coolest new stuff based on their personal preferences, right? So it's going to be, and you're right in the middle of it. So yeah, very cool. What's next for you? What's next?
I mean, the typical growing pains of a growing company. So we are in the process of onboarding a lot of more people in order to ensure that we also hold up with the traffic. And there's so many projects we are basically involved in now, and where companies call us up and say, listen, can you do this? Can you do that? So it's always a question of how do you keep focus? Because as a young company, you have 100 opportunities to do something, but only 2 really will make a difference. So that's always the biggest challenge: focus, energy, and time of the people on the right things, which really make a difference. Number one. I think number 2 for us, big one also, is going to be the token launch planned for the near future. We are not going to say exactly one, but this is for us something super important, because we really believe also we can play a leading role in defining, let's say, a communication leader in this space. where essentially we are going out and perhaps also just partnering or buying other companies in this space. Because again, email is such a great horizontal communication layer and is applicable to all kinds of things. And I believe at the moment we're clearly the biggest also globally in this space. So we have an opportunity to play a leading role, and we definitely strive to do this.
Amazing. Gerald, thank you so much for your time today. I mean, itching to talk to you, itching to hear the story, to share the story as well. Yeah, congrats on all the success and best of luck, my friend.
Thank you very much, Chris, for your time. Also, great speaking to you. And again, great. Thanks a lot for that great introduction also that you made. We didn't speak about that story, but perhaps another time.
No, we'll have to. I'll put it in the show notes. I think you need the visuals for that one too, because that blog post of yours with the former Secretary of State, it's just such a random kind of situation as well. It's amazing. I will share it for the listeners. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, that was really absurd, right? When I wrote it, I thought like, well, this is like a movie thing.
Yeah, it's just kind of nuts. Oh yeah, we'll be in Lisbon. Oh, who's gonna come to dinner that night? It's just such a funny, such a funny thing.
Super funny. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining Dream Pushers. Inspired. Subscribe and share. With dedication, craft your legacy. Push boundaries.